So, first things first. Sorry, haven't released any content in a while, and that is my bad. My internet situation still sucks. Hope is leaving me. Although the broadcasts have stopped for a short time, so maybe there is some hope that something else might come out my channel. But I felt like I should share some thoughts to try to remedy the situation of an infrequency of content. I was in the shower and I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, might as well share my thoughts. And the thoughts are on the topic of what Semler was recently asked by the CNN dude whilst he was at E-League, and why his precious time was being wasted with such an irrelevant question. That's pretty bad on the CNN dude, but never mind. It happened, and it's going to continue to happen. Why is, well, or rather, is gaming or esports, is it a sport? Now, this is a question we're going to be bombarded or constantly, frequently exposed to whenever the mainstream or generally the outside world is looking in to our little world, which is, as we belovedly call it, esports. And the thing is that it is irrelevant. Just as Semler answered, he more or less said, it's irrelevant, it has the numbers, it has the backing, it has the support, people enjoy it, so it's growing, you're seeing it happening. Does it need this label? It's like, dude, look over there. It's happening. Look at Twitch, it's happening, it's on TV, it is clearly a thing that's happening right now. You don't need to use a reductionist label to justify what it is. You don't need to use a reductionist label to validate it in the grand scheme of things. It is a thing and it's happening. So that's it. I don't know, maybe the average Joe needs to read in a newspaper before he believes it. The president says esports is a sport. I don't know if that's a thing, but anyway. So from that, level, I can't tell you if it's a sport or not, because clearly this is semantics. If this question is still being asked at this point, and you have and people can look at esports and look at it and still ask this question, to me, it's clearly just a horrendous abuse of semantics and just general gymnastics in that sense, trying to flex the semantics in a way which supports their argument in one way or another because of whatever predisposed biases they may have. So enough on that run. I'll tell you what it is, and there are maybe one or two components. So I'm going to talk mainly about three components, but there are maybe one or two others which generally pop up in this situation. So to me, the way that I look at it, first of all, the reason why I would say that it is a sport, or that it shares very strongly the characteristics that a sport or anything of competitive nature that is played like a sport has, is that you have decision making. So decision making is like the theoretical model that one can apply to an environment where you have tools and you have players within the environment inserted with an objective, and there you go. That's something that we have. That is something that is there. There is the metagame as well as strategy and tactics. All those things exist, which are ways to try to optimally achieve something with the tools given at hand within that environment. That is, okay, we have that. The second thing is execution. So execution is, is hand-eye coordination most of the time, because that's how us bipedal species tend to do things. We use our hands or our legs or our feet to accomplish things. So you will see, us trying to use, or rather we use the tools and we try to maximize their efficacy by creating techniques with which to use them most optimally, and we keep perfecting them with our puny human minds, and we try, and as much as we try, we can't ever achieve 100% consistency with a lot of these things, which is what I suppose keeps it interesting, that we are so frail, weak, and otherwise incompetent. But generally speaking, it is good for competition and so on. So we have all these techniques and we have to perfect them over hours and hours and hours, teaching our body, creating motor coordination, creating motor memory to the motor coordination, and that's techniques basically. You've got to perfect the technique over time. And then the third aspect is going to be psychology. So it's the human element, which is so deeply intriguing and interesting. Got it on the third try there. And it's intriguing in many ways and interesting in many ways. Obviously, for example, there is a heuristical component as well. So heuristics is, and I'm not sure, again, this might be, I'm going to be talking about psychology a little bit, but the heuristics aspect, I'm not sure if it fits there or where it really fits, but heuristics is just I'm going to use it I'm going to try to compartmentalize it into the psychology column, because I believe that in many senses, it's going to have an impact on behavior or behavior of the player. So heuristics is being exposed to a huge degree of different variables within the game, and it's going to be over time, your brain realizing or spotting certain patterns, and then having automatic behaviors or reactions and adjustments to certain things. You might hear a sound over there, and based on all the different things your brain has picked up on the minimap or otherwise other bits of information you have, your behavior then is kind of pre-programmed based on the experiences that you have to make you to basically create shortcuts to decision making, because it's so fast that you don't have time. And that's another thing that's very interesting, is that these decisions are made so incredibly quickly, and that's one facet. Again, sports can be argued this way or that way. There are some that are very slow, in which you don't have this component as much. But in our games, they tend to be very fast, like StarCraft, like Quake, like Counter-Strike, even the MOBA games. I say even the MOBA games. I know any people that play MOBAs might hate me for that. But you have a heuristical component, which is deeply fascinating. So creating behavior within the player over time. So you're slowly conditioning yourself to think in certain ways, slowly conditioning yourself to have certain reactions. Then you have the idea that the almost the adversarial aspect, where you have constant challenge from somebody else, and this is motivating, and it can also have the opposite effect. It can be enraging, so then it will create emotion, and emotion can create issues when you want to play the game from an analytical perspective, or emotion can cause spikes physiologically, so maybe you have more adrenaline, or maybe whatever. I have to say, I don't know too much about physiology, so I can't really say, but maybe you have spikes in cortisol, stress hormone, all this kind of stuff, and it's going to create inconsistency within your execution now, or it's going to affect your decision making. Because, for example, let's say if we're talking about outcome orientedness or outcome dependency, something I love to talk about all the time, you have this situation whereby let's say you have an emotional attachment, which is a psychological thing, to an outcome. The outcome is not as expected, creating a negative feedback emotionally, and that creates a physiological response, which then further hinders decision making or execution potentially. So this is an example of this aspect. There's then this aspect of, let's say, flow state. What the hell is flow state? This is such an interesting thing in sports psychology as well, and that's also experienced in all of our games, where you get into the zone. Again, it could be largely a heuristics based thing, whereby you have practiced so much that your brain is just switched on, and you just hit that beautiful phase of kind of blurred consciousness, where you're completely present and just wrecking people, just Zen mode wrecking people. Maybe that's what it should be called, Zen mode wrecking. I have no idea, but that's a beautiful aspect as well. And by the way, as a side tangent, I have to say, one of the most poetic things and again, I guess this kind of fits into the psychology column, is the fact that your greatest, and I've said this before, your greatest friend is your adversary, is your nemesis, is your opponent, is the person that is facing you, and because that person who beats you down shows you your weaknesses and shows you your frailties. He shows you your limits, and this is something that creates, or can create, and sometimes maybe the opposite, I don't know, but it can break people too. I've seen that happen. It can create humility, which is a really important concept, because generally speaking, there is this problem, I think, that we have in society these days. I can't really speak for when before I was born, for obvious reasons. But these days, there tends to be a problem where you can kind of get mollycoddled by the system when there's not nearly enough adversarialism. Unless, let's say, you're into sports at any point where you do experience this, you don't really get that. You don't really get the same competitive vibe. You don't really get the same experience. And I think it's a very valuable one. And it has a very molding, or rather adaptive effect on your brain, on your psychology, because again, you suddenly realize, holy shit, I just got beaten. I don't know why. I'm going to practice hard now. I practiced hard and it still don't work. Now you have to be like, okay, what do I have to fix? It's such an interesting and explorative journey that we have, and that cannot be ever underestimated. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and I actually think that's one of the most addictive things that really gets us all into this stuff, is that process of improvement, which is a psychological process. Because generally speaking, we will have issues, again, whether it be anger, or whether it be inconsistent execution, or whether it be lack of motivation due to practice, or whether it be an issue with general focus. Maybe you're actually somebody that knows all the right decisions and generally, you're a good player, but your focus sucks. You can't, when you're holding an angle or when you're playing a game, for about a couple seconds, there's just a couple seconds, you're out of position all of a sudden. And then you put yourself in a spot where you're going to be fucked. And that's a spot where you're going to die because you lacked focus. Or maybe it's that spot where you're going to be tilting a little bit. Like this whole idea of tilt, this is a hugely psychological thing. Why does tilt happen? There's so many reasons why tilt can and cannot happen, or how you can try to condition yourself against anger and tilting. I mean, tilting, for example, like for me, I've gone through many different things that have caused tilt, and I've had to try to put in many different mindset adjustments and processes to directly attack the things that are tilting me. And of course, all these things do have the great effect that it is a self-improvement and self-betterment process. It is a process that's going to encourage higher cognitive function. It's going to be a process that if you really get into it and you're trying to really be a professional player, really digging deep, and it might make you analytical if you otherwise weren't, because that's what you have to do to get there. You have to become that person that needs to be analytical because you want it so badly. Like there's so many aspects that are very intriguing, and perhaps I'm going to make videos on them at some point. I will write it down. I have a pen here. Wait, what is this? This is a receipt. I'm going to write on this receipt because I have nothing else available to me currently. Make some videos on these topics. Make stuff on these topics. And I'm going to put it here, right there, where I won't forget it. Now it's staring me in the face, and I know what it means. So yeah, very interesting aspects, and all these things are shared by sports. So I, at this end of this 10-minute video or 12-minute video, I again, do we need this reductionist stereotype kind of approach? And I do give it to everyone who, well, rather, I do give it to the human way of life, which is stereotyping. It is reductionist in nature. Things are too complex for us to immediately be able to make the best decisions. So we're going to compartmentalize things. We're going to create processes where, like stereotyping or labeling, which is more or less the same thing, to handle the information that we see en masse every day in our life, to simplify things so that we can actually consume it and make informed decisions which don't fry our brains. That kind of makes sense. But I ask you, in fact, it's not even necessary. Is it a sport? Doesn't matter. Is it fucking awesome? Yes, it is.